Sure. Are we ready?
No, I apologize.
Oh.
Bear with me 1 second, please.
Take your time. We held you guys up.
Did he
So.
say he was putting his badge on like this?
I just told him to
Again.
be alerted.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should be good. Sorry about that.
That's right. Got one more in the back, getting ready. Are we good?
Yeah.
Oh. Let's get started. Good afternoon, my name is Andrew Anspro. I'm the president of the Uniformed Firefighters Association of Greater New York. I represent, we'll try that again, we'll start from the top.
Thank you.
All right. Could you spell your first name?
Sure. Good afternoon, my name is Andrew Anspro, the president of the Uniformed Firefighters Association of Greater New York. The name is spelled A-N-S-B-R-O. I represent 20,000 active and retired New York City firefighters. Joining me today is Chris Viola, the UFA Treasurer, Eric Bischoff, the Staten Island Trustee, Mark DeRay, the Bronx Trustee, and also today we have joining with us City Council Member Joanne Ariola, who is the Chair of the Committee of Fire and Emergency Management. I called this press conference today to let New York City know that the FDNY has reduced staffing on 20 of its engine companies in New York City. This is in direct response to the mayor's calls for budget cuts due to the migrant crisis. The affected neighborhoods that are affected by these staffing cuts include, in Manhattan, the Village, Midtown Manhattan, and Harlem. In the Bronx, Morrisania, Mount Hope, Fordham, and Gun Hill. In Staten Island, West Brighton, and Mariners Harbor. In Brooklyn, Borough Park, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brownsville, Cypress Hills, and East Flatbush. And in Queens, Jamaica, Dutch Kills, Flushing Meadow, and Ozone Park. But this does not affect just those neighborhoods. Multiple engines are required for every fire. Even a small fire has a minimum of 4 engines responding. So this, if you live adjacent to any one of these neighborhoods, this will reduce the number of firefighters coming to assist you if and when you need us. The engine companies that are losing staff are among the busiest in the city, meaning that they have the most fires or the most runs, and there are multiple engines at each fire. This has the potential to reduce, to affect half of the fires in New York City. You know, a first alarm will have 4 engines, a second alarm will have 8, and so on and so on. A fifth alarm will have 20 engine companies. Undoubtedly, there are going to be staffing shortages at every single major fire in the city. This will make surviving a fire even harder for residents trapped by the fire. By the FDNY's own studies, they show that having the fifth fire in an engine company can cut the time it takes to put water on the fire by 50%. In a job where seconds matter, this will undoubtedly cost minutes. This can be the difference between life and death. In that time, some unfortunate New Yorkers won't have time to spare, and for them it means death. This risk doesn't just apply to civilians. This will also put New York City firefighters at risk. As we have less firefighters to fight a fire, the fire will have undoubtedly grown due to the delays in us getting there. This is December, the time of the year when fires and the intensity of fires always increases. The increase in fires will continue well into the spring. There couldn't possibly be a worse time for this cut. On top of that, we are continuing to see massive increase in e-bike fires. Their numbers are growing exponentially. The fires themselves are fast-moving, sometimes explosive, and because of that, we are seeing more victims in each fire. And they account for an even ever-increasing number of the civilian deaths that we have. The only thing getting between a trapped New Yorker and death during an e-bike fire is the speed of the FDNY putting a hose in place and putting water on the fire. This will unquestionably slow that down. At this point in time, we should be adding staffing to engine companies in response to e-bike fires, not reducing it. It's also important to note that today there was a fatal e-bike fire in the Bronx. There were 6 other victims removed from that fire as well. New York City is estimating a $7 billion budget deficit due to the migrant crisis. The FDNY has been tasked with cutting 5% of its budget. The FDNY has come up with $74 million worth of cuts, and the reduction is estimated to save a little less than $8 million, $7.9 million, which in the scheme of things amounts to 1/10 of 1% of the entire budget deficit due to the migrant crisis. Surely we can find $7.9 million elsewhere. I don't think New Yorkers want their fire service disrupted over such a petty amount. I'm calling on the mayor, the comptroller, and the city council and the FDNY to find money elsewhere. Money can always be replaced in a budget, but a lost life is gone forever. Thank you. City council, please come on up.
Ma'am, can you give us your name and spelling, please?
Sure, my name is Councilwoman Joanne Ariola, Joannariola, and I am the Chair of Fire and Emergency Management, the New York City Council. The removal of the existing 5th firefighter positions from engine companies around New York City directly puts the safety and well-being of New Yorkers at risk. 5th firefighters are crucial because they help take the strain and stress off fellow engine crews, and thereby reducing the likelihood of injury. In a fire department that is already understaffed by at least 900 firefighters, this decision virtually guarantees that there will be a rise in injuries and a corresponding lack of training and manpower because of it. We are seeing yet another example of short-sightedness. I am committed to working with the City Council, with the administration, to see where we can find the money to replace the 5th firefighter. The 20 companies that are going to lose that 5th firefighter are some of the busiest companies in the city of New York, one of which is in Ozone Park, which is in District 32. We cannot afford to lose the 5th firefighter. In fact, we've been fighting to put more 5th firefighters on as the lithium-ion battery fires continue to grow and lives are continually lost. By removing these 5th firefighters, we're really putting people in danger. By leaving them in place, we can extensively stop tragedy before it happens. Thank you.
Would like to open the floor. Questions?
Sure.
In the back. He was up first.
Oh, Roger.
Come on. All right.
All right. Just to be clear on something. So if one of these affected companies sends 3 engines to a fire, each of those 3 engines would be down 1 person?
No.
Okay. that
There's
explains it.
193 engine companies in New York City.
Okay.
There was a time where they all had 5 firefighters. And every time there's a financial crisis, they try to take staffing away. Somewhere around, I believe it was 1996, they settled on 60 engine companies, a third of the city, in the 60 busiest areas. During Mike Bloomberg's financial crisis, he ended that staffing altogether, and we fought and got only 20 back. It is a small amount. We should be going the other way. The debate was always that when situations change, we'll address it. It's either when firefighting technology gets better and possibly we could reduce it, or if situations go the other way, we should increase the staffing of 5 firefighter companies. And I would say e-bikes definitely, the e-bike fires definitely qualifies as a time we should be increasing the number of firefighters. So say there's a call right now for a fire across the street. The call comes in, you'll have 3 engines and 2 trucks show up. If it turns out to be an actual fire, they're adding an additional engine company, an additional truck, rescue squad chiefs. Those initial companies that are there, the first 2 engines are tasked with stretching that line. The first company gets there, they already start if they see a fire. Having the officer is not in the count. One chauffeur stands by the fire truck, he gets the water out of the hydrant. The other 3 firefighters have to take the hose and get it to where the fire is. So if you're pulling up to a project or a high-rise building, 3 firefighters are entering. They're getting in they're going up to the floor below the fire. The truck is going up to open the door, and it's possible you're not going to have enough line to get from the standpipe to where that fire is. So you would need the 4th length of hose that they're carrying. It's somewhat complex, but the point I'm getting at is when they stretch that line, it takes longer to get in place because there's less hands on it. And in residential fires, when they're pulling that hose off the back of the engine in the street, there's 1 less person doing it. Every time you pass a corner with that hose, you need someone there whipping it around, and having less people undoubtedly gets the hose in place much slower. And the studies they've done shown it takes 50% less time with the additional firefighter.
Okay, but I'm still, I'm asking more about the numbers here.
The numbers, yes.
Yeah, so there are 20 fire companies that are affected.
Yes.
Engine companies. How many are there altogether?
193.
And the others already have 4?
They already have 4, yes.
So it's just these 20, they're bringing them in line with everyone else?
Right, in the busiest areas in the city.
Why is 5 a magic number if most of the engine companies in the city have 4-man trucks already?
Well, the common knowledge is more hands make light work. They've strategically placed these additional staffing in these companies because of the heightened number of fires, or in the issue of Midtown companies, Chris is in a Midtown company, that next engine company may not be coming at all because of traffic delays. Sometimes it'll take a half an hour to get a few blocks.
So it's 1 engine per company, right?
An engine is a company.
Oh, okay. Why is winter worse for fires?
Usually heating issues, electric heat, sometimes faulty wiring, but we always have a rise in fires in the winter. Some people in some areas use unconventional heating methods that may cause fires, but usually it's a heavy load of electricity being used over taxed wiring.
So is anyone actually losing their job, or are they being reshuffled?
No one's losing their job. They're just putting less firefighters to work every day. You know, there was today we're putting basically 100 firefighters to work less than we were doing on 9/11. Bloomberg closed 6 companies. Bloomberg cut staffing. And so we're actually down 100 firefighters per day at a time when the population of New York City has gone up by 1 million people.
So if this is not the first time that the department has had to go down from 5 to 4 in a select number of companies, what makes the time that you are working in now different? What are the pressures that are different now than they were back then?
Well, the e-bike fires, for one thing, they are increasing exponentially. But what I will say is this. The mayor has, the FDNY feels that they can do this in relation to a medical leave caveat in the contract that says if medical leave is above 7.5%, they have the right to do this. Medical leave has been over 7.5% for years. Mayor de Blasio ignored this when he was mayor because he didn't want the additional risk. He understood what was at stake. And when Mayor Adams came into office, people in the FDNY headquarters told him you have the option to remove staffing and save some money. And he immediately did it. And about a week later, there was the fire in the Bronx where 17 people were lost. We sat down with members of the Adams administration and told them 2 of the companies in the first 2 assignment, 2 of the 4 companies would have had an additional firefighter. Had the additional firefighter been on that line, that fire could have went out faster. The other firefighter could have been assisting people out of that stairwell. If the fire was out faster, there would have been less smoke. If that other firefighter was assisting people out of that stairwell, less people would have been in it, or people would have got out faster, and we would have had less civilian fatalities. In total, there's no way to ever say what exactly would have happened if that staffing would have been there, but they understood the severity and the necessity of it, and they decided it wasn't worth the $1 million a month to have that additional risk. So they brought the 5th firefighter back shortly thereafter the Bronx fire. And now, in direct response to the budget cuts, it's been taken away.
You mentioned that contractual provision about medical leave. Is there negotiations with the city or with OLR going on? I mean, is that something you're interested in changing in your future contracts? Is that
We're looking
a
to
way
sit.
out of
We're
this?
looking to sit down with OLR. Unfortunately, every time we try to get additional staffing, they try to make us pay for it. Now, you would never see the NYPD, the PBA, pay for more cops to protect the streets. You know, our members shouldn't have to pay for additional fire staffing, despite the fact that the population goes up. As we all know, traffic is a problem. So they want to basically try to make us pay for it. Now, one of the things this is tied to is the medical leave.
Mm-hmm.
When this provision came about 30 years ago, we had a much higher head count. Due to the hiring freeze they had in 2009, we've been down in head count for almost 15 years, where we've never recovered. So right now, we should probably have about 9,000 firefighters, but currently, the annualized number is about 7,950. So we're down 1,000 firefighters. Of course, medical leave is going to go up. The number is 7.5, but right now we're at 8.2. A year ago, we were at 8.75% medical leave, and there was no talk of taking it away. This is a direct response to the budget cuts. And it can be ignored. They just have to find the money
Are
elsewhere.
those negotiations ongoing at the moment?
We haven't sat down with them yet. We have continually asked them to do it, but I could tell you negotiations move a lot slower than you guys do, so that's why we're here.
How many firefighters approximately are on duty at any given time?
Any given time, about 1,900?
1,900. So you're talking about 10 people fewer citywide,
20.
20 people fewer. A lot of people are going to hear that and say, yeah, it doesn't sound like that. Big
If it's the one down the block from your house, you'd probably think differently.
That's right.
Or even worse, in your house.
Yeah.
Also, I think what we have to take into consideration is that if there are 4 instead of 5 firefighters on an engine company, then other engine companies will have to respond, leaving other areas without any coverage. And I think that's a point that we have to really, make heard, because if they're going into one area, the other area is left without coverage. So you'll need more engines to put out a lithium-ion battery that's going on in Brooklyn, and then other areas of Brooklyn, or whether it's in Queens or any other borough, would be left without their engine companies there in case something happens in their community.
Right, thank you.
So these are the busiest companies in the city, these 20, right?
Yes, usually among them. The number gets changed from time to time, the location.
How much more busy is it that other areas are okay with 4-person engine companies and these can't?
Well, it's not always 100% a factor of the number of runs, it's also the location. If you're in an area that's single-family dwellings, 3 firefighters, 4 firefighters might be enough to get that line off the back and get it in your front door to where the fire is. But if you're in an area where there's a project, or there's one of these high-rise buildings where you've got to get up a certain number of floors, you need that additional staffing. Now, the numbers we're talking about, in 1996, when we received 60 fifth firefighters back, at that point in time, the run totals were a totally different number. My engine company that I started out in was 58 engine, one of the busiest engine companies at the time, and it still is. They were doing 3,700 runs a year. The last year I checked, they did 6,300 runs a year. That's a run about every hour and a half from January 1st to December 31st. It's extremely busy. And they're not alone. There are companies that are actually doing more runs than that. So they're constantly out the door. And when you have these issues where you remove that staffing, sometimes it'll trigger an additional engine company that has to respond, thereby creating a ripple effect that's taking more staffing taking your engine company away from you, where normally wouldn't be there because of that one additional firefighter. There was a time they would send one engine, 2 engines to a fire. Now they're sending 3 and 2.
I guess
And
what
3
I'm
engines, 2
asking is,
trucks.
If 173 fire engine companies can get by with 4-person trucks, why can't these other 20?
You know,
Sure.
and if, just want to add something to this matrix. These 20 companies, the vast majority of them, are single engine companies. They're not in quarters with the ladder company. That's how they were hand selected. Because the ladder company, one of their primary jobs is to break the door down so the engine company can move the line in a fire. Most of these 20, if not all of them, don't have a truck company in quarters, yet they're in very highly densely populated areas where they get a lot of runs. Now, if they're a single engine and they pull up on a fire scene without the truck, it's up to them to break the door down. And that is the essence of having the 5th firefighter on that rig. They're now taken out. And when the fire happens in that neighborhood, they're going to be tasked with breaking that door down or waiting for the truck to get in there to do it for them.
So these 20 are all single engine trucks, don't have ladder companies?
They are not all single engines. A lot of them are.
A lot of them.
There's another caveat that we probably left out. Again, we stated there's about 1,900 firefighters working every single day. During the course of the day, some of them get injured. They will take the 20 firefighters, and whoever's closest will go to that engine company and backfill. So now, basically, this is also stopping companies from becoming 3 firefighter engine companies, or they may lose someone in the truck company and they'll remove that firefighter. Every one of the truck is a very specialized job. One of them's job, one person's job they traditionally take is called the outside vent person. They would go to the back of the building and go in the back window and search for victims. If they can't get an additional firefighter, because that's what we're also decreasing the manpower pool, they will start removing the OV from places, the outside vent. And they're the ones that actually do the majority of the searches and the rescues. So not only is the 20 firefighters a staffing issue for getting the hose in place, it's also a fail-safe for reduced staffing during the day, so you do have that additional firefighter in the back making those searches.
Sir, what's
Excuse
your
me.
first, can you give us your first name?
Yeah, my name is Eric, last name Bischoff, B-I-S-C-H.
Eric Bischoff?
Yes, Bischoff, B-I-S-C-H-O-F-F.
If
And
they
your
are not gonna
battalion is
lose
what?
their
Staten Island
their
Borough
job,
Trustee.
what's gonna happen with their salary?
No one's losing their job, they're just not staffing the company with an additional person.
But what is gonna happen with the salary, their salary? Are they gonna earn the same amount?
The 5th firefighter is not a person, it is how many people are working on any given day in that
Okay.
firehouse. It's not assigned to one specific person. You know, there's a roster of 25 firefighters, and somewhere between usually 4 and 6 of them are showing up
But
for
if
work.
they are not working any single day, are they going to
They
earn?
move them somewhere else. Whoever's assigned to go will
But then
go
their
somewhere.
salary is gonna be,
Yes, this is not affecting
Exactly the same.
firefighter. It's not affecting firefighter salary.
okay,
This is just affecting how many firefighters will be at work at each individual company.
got it.
You mentioned that the 20 companies that are having this position eliminated, they also cover other companies around them in their areas. Is there like a particular percentage or a particular number that each of these 20 companies cover? So one in the East Village, does it cover like 3 companies, or do they all
Well,
cover?
so what happens is, if there's a fire across the street, they will assign, if there's a call for smoke, they will assign the 3 nearest available engine companies to show up. You know, the closest one, if it's 16 engine, if they're on EMS run, they're gonna pull the engine from another place. And they'll send initially 3 engines, no matter where they are. As the call volume goes up, there'll be less and less companies available. Now also, this will change the response matrix in those busy areas where they would normally send 2 engines, they'll now have to send an additional engine, and that reduces the availability of the others. It's extremely complex, but it's important enough that the city acknowledges they have to have someone on duty.
The reason I was asking is because you mentioned these are the most densely populated areas, they have the most runs, the most fires. So I'm guessing if these are the most densely populated areas and they're also covering other, companies around them, then this isn't just impacting these areas, it's
Absolutely.
also impacting the companies that they're covering. So, so the whole system will see like
The
a
entire
ripple
system,
effect.
which is why I feel confident in saying, that based on having multiple engines respond to one fire, this has the potential to affect half the fires in the city going forward. If you have a 5th alarm, you can have 20 engine companies there. And undoubtedly, you'll have several of them not have the 5th firefighter. As I stated in the Bronx fire 2 years ago, 2 of the first 4 engine companies should have had an additional firefighter.
explain the
Mr. Bishop,
financial
please?
savings?
I'm
Because I'm sorry, I'm just a little confused. If no one's losing their job, just explain how this.
It's an
rounds
overtime
to-
savings. Right, we're under head count. They have us budgeted for 8,400 firefighters in head count. But that head count only relates to having firefighters on each rig. So as we stated, there's, say, 1,900 firefighters working. They multiply, for every one job, they have to have 5 firefighters, and that's where the number comes from. So they don't even account, the budget doesn't even account for the 500 jobs offline, the jobs in Metrotech, the tool room, the training, you know, the 300 probies in probie school. Doesn't account for those at all. Our budget is based on just who's riding in the fire truck today or 24/7. It doesn't count for any of the other jobs. So because they've kept it this way, because they know they're not in a position to catch up. But what it does at a time like this, when you're trying to save money, it looks as if we're not that far away from headcount, when in reality, we're probably 1,000 firefighters short from where we should be. And if that's the case, you would expect there to be more injuries.
Sorry, I thought you were at the
Sure.
Mr. Bishop, can you just tell me your title again? I didn't-
Yeah, I'm the Staten Island trustee for the UFA.
Staten
Two of the
Island.
companies in Staten Island were two of the affected companies throughout the 20.
I'm sorry. To piggyback off her point, so the way these positions are structured, are they paid in overtime? Is that-
They, at this point, they would be paid in overtime. In a perfect world, if the FDNY were ever actually to catch up with staffing, they would be paid by just regular firefighters showing up for their daily shift. You know, we would prefer it. Our members are, you know, have been working an extreme amount of overtime. That's why the medical leave is up. But at the same time, we understand that this is a huge safety issue for us. You know, if you're in a fire, you want as many people there as possible. You know, whether it's your day off or not. Nobody says they'd rather have the day off if one of the guys they work with is going to get hurt.
So you're saying your members will suffer financially because of overtime?
I guess so, but that's part of the whole budget issue. They're
Well, you say
unwilling to
yes,
pay.
so isn't that correct?
I wouldn't say suffer, but it
Well,
doesn't,
they
it will
would get
affect
less
them.
money.
It would affect them, yes. Yeah.
Are there any other effects of these budget cuts beyond the fifth firefighter issue that are gonna affect your members? Whether it's taking members off light duty or some of the other cuts?
Well, some of the other cuts that they've come up with is that they want to remove about 200 offline positions.
Mhm.
They're also trying to move firefighters that are full duty back into the field. So sometimes someone will take an offline position, either a training position, or they might work in recruitment or ceremonial, or any other of these units. And they're full duty positions.
Yeah.
And now they're basically trying to cut down the number of full duty positions offline,
Mhm.
and basically use the injured members as a temp agency and have them work those jobs, you know, while they're recuperating. At the same time, one of the issues they're looking to address is they're trying to decrease the number of offline jobs, but also force people into retirement if they can't find them a job. So now if a member gets hurt, they give them 90 days. If they apply for reasonable accommodation, if they're deemed disabled, they can apply for reasonable accommodation to stay employed, because they basically want to be a productive member of the FDNY and continue their employment with the FDNY. Traditionally, they would find them an offline job, of which they have approximately 1,000 right now, and they're looking to cut that number. So what they're looking to do is force these people into retirement, where normally they would find themselves in an offline position and still be a productive member of the FDNY.
And some of those people who are suffering from medical issues, some of those could be 9/11 related.
Absolutely.
9/11 related.
Absolutely.
Can you give us some context in terms of how many runs the busiest engine companies are doing now compared to a decade ago?
I'd have to look it up for a decade ago, but I did state my own company that I worked in was 3,700 from 1996. It actually did 4,000 runs in 2001, and it did about 6,300 last year. I think we've had some companies pass 7,000 runs.
There's two companies, Engine 290 and Engine 62 in the Bronx. Engine 290 is in Brooklyn. They both did over 7,000.
Can you
Right.
say that for us again at the mic? And your name, please?
My name is Mark Dore, M-A-R-C-D-O-R-E. I'm the Bronx trustee. Engine 62 in the Bronx and Engine 290 in Brooklyn each did over 7,000 runs for 2022.
Yeah, so the numbers, as you know, continually increase. The FDNY, when they have their annual announcement of the numbers, they continually crow about the fact that the number of emergencies responded to keeps increasing. But what isn't increasing is the staffing of FDNY engines and trucks. We're not opening up any new firehouses, And now today, this last weekend, we cut staffing. We're making the job even more difficult. There's an engine company for roughly every 50,000 citizens. You've added a couple 100,000 migrants and you don't have another engine company. What do you expect to happen to the system? It's another burden on the system, and now they're actually cutting the staffing on 20 companies in the city.
What are your thoughts on the migrants' impact on all of this?
Well, it's affecting us budgetarily, obviously, due to this, but it also has an increase in runs. 100,000 people, some of them you get hurt every day. You have medical runs. There are fires related to, people in the hotels. It's everything. Any amount of people you add to the system does create a necessity for a fire department and having more fire department resources. So the resource change alone should necessitate that we get more companies or at least more staffing. And we're getting the exact opposite effect. We're being forced to do more with less.
Thank you.
Sorry, the 7.5% in medical leave, 7.5% of the number of firefighters?
That is the annual hours lost based on the last 365 days. So it's a moving number, but they, as I said, base it on 1 year's worth of data, and it changes every day based on how many people were working, how many people were on medical leave yesterday.
So annual number of hours lost in labor, the number of firefighters working?
Yes,
Because they're
right,
on medical leave.
because they're on medical leave, yes. And the number a year ago was about 8.75, and the number has been trending in the right direction. It just takes a long time to change it. Right now, we're around 8.15. We're halfway there, but at the same time, we're under headcount by almost 1,000 firefighters. And, a small difference between, 7.5 and 6.15 is minuscule. And, they're penalizing New York City firefighters, putting them in more jeopardy, but also putting New York City residents in these areas in more jeopardy. Over, as we said, 0.1% of the budget crisis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more?
We mentioned,
Thank you.
the death last night, that was the 100th fire.
Oh, yes. Last night at the Ebike fire, I was unaware of that statistic, but last night there was the Ebike fire in the Bronx. The death was the 100th e-bike-related death, e-bike fire-related death in New York City. I think 5 years ago, the number was probably 0, and the numbers just keep increasing. As I've stated before, these fires, they normally start out explosively. People charge these bikes by the front door of their apartment, and it traps them in the apartment, and they seek refuge in a back bedroom. And the speed at which it takes to get a hose to that front door of the apartment is the difference between life and death. And if you have e-bikes in your neighborhood, which I'm sure you all do, or you have them in your building, every one of them in the building has the potential to cause a fire that could take your life. And you want us to have the additional staffing to put them out. We should be getting additional staffing. The rate of increase of the e-bike fires would necessitate additional staffing. If the NYPD told you that there were more and more gun murders, and at the same breath they told you they were cutting the crews that go out and search for illegal guns, you'd think they were crazy. But at the same time, the FDNY continues to say that e-bike fires are a problem. And today, a few days ago, they announced the staffing cuts. Well, they didn't announce it, we announced it. They don't want to talk about it. And they say it's labor-related. It's not labor-related, it's budget-related. Because 2 years ago, they ignored it. A year ago, they ignored it. De Blasio ignored it. And today, because of the budget, they're not ignoring it anymore.
So are they disputing what you're saying, that it's the 5th firefighter at 20 companies? You say you're announcing it. They have not said that.
Well, they're not announcing it. Absolutely not. It started Saturday morning. Saturday morning is when they started it. They don't announce that. They say they're enacting a contractual provision of our contract. And again, I know some people think it's in the contract, that must be sour grapes. That caveat started in 1996 and was one of those take it or leave it provisions. So that's one thing I've learned at the negotiation table. That comes a take it or leave it point, and the take it or leave it point was a 7.5% medical leave. But at that time, the staffing was much higher. The staffing should be more of a function. First of all, the staffing should never be tied to medical leave. But if you're going to insist on that, you should probably take the head count of the FDNY into effect of that as well. We're operating with 1,000 less firefighters than we should have.
Can you just tell me if you think there's a correlation between the number of migrants that have come into the city since last spring and the number of e-bike related fires that we're seeing in the city currently, and then if there's sort of an irony of cutting the number of firefighters to respond to those violence that may or may not be a result of the number of migrants that have come to the city.
Well, I cannot point to any actual evidence that points to a correlation between migrants and e-bike fires, but I will say...
Only because they happen to do a lot of deliveries on those e-bikes.
Well,
That's why I think that.
absolutely. They're not buying Lamborghinis. They're buying e-bikes. And also, with congestion pricing coming up, I think a lot of people are going to be buying more e-bikes. And, they're going to look to save money any way they can. And, the FDNY's response and a lot of politicians' responses has been to ban, aftermarket batteries. That's not really, in my opinion, as effective as more enforcement. We've banned guns and drugs, and I don't think anyone says those problems are solved. We have to have more enforcement. I personally think that they should hold the companies that hire these people accountable for the vehicles. I don't see Amazon telling people they've got to buy their own Amazon truck or UPS, but for some reason we're placing the responsibility on migrant workers and low-income workers to buy these vehicles and maintain them. So how exactly do you really think they're going to go out of their way to spend more money on a better battery? They're barely getting by themselves, so they're going to buy the cheapest bike they can get their hands on, and when they need a new battery, they're going to get the cheapest one they can get their hands on, and they're going to bring it into their place to charge it, put it by the front door, and when the battery blows, they're trapped inside their own apartment.
I just want to say, because I think it was your question with the correlation with the migrants. The mayor's been saying for a very long time that the city was going to see gouging cuts because of the migrants coming into our city and us not getting any help from the federal government and very little help from our state leaders. This is absolutely a realization of that prediction. We're seeing it across the board. We're seeing all our first responders are suffering because of this. We've had an influx of over 160,000 migrants with close to 70,000 in our care, a lot more e-bikes, electric mopeds, and things of that on our streets, on our sidewalks, and yet we're cutting back on essential services with our first responders, whether it's the 5th firefighter or no further NYPD classes or no basket pickup or less basket pickup or no safety agents in our schools. It will track back to the money that we're spending on a daily basis to keep the migrants housed and fed and have medical services and social services. And it is strictly and solely on the city of New York. And until Washington wakes up and the state decides to be more of a participant in what's happening in our city, we're going to see further cuts. And that's only going to further debilitate our city. It will make it further unsafe, and it will make it dirtier, and we won't even have Sunday service at our libraries. It's already been cut. So what has been predicted has now become a realization. So anyone who didn't believe it, believe it. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, I know it's a complex issue. They teach Pro School for weeks and weeks and weeks, but we have so many different duties that overlap. I could spend all day trying to tell you where it's going to cause an issue, but it's we're constantly fighting for more.
You said half the fire, you affect half the fires.
So if there's 193 engine companies, and at a fire, you're going to have, at a bare minimum, 4 engine companies. So, a little quick math, 4, also the busiest areas. So you would say, if you have 4 engines divided by, 4 divided,
through the math.
yeah, it's
But you're saying about half the fires.
half the fires. There will be, 1 or more of the companies will have a reduction in staff.
All right.
1 or more of the companies. And in the busier areas, you tend to have these companies concentrated.
Sure.
You know, I think in the Bronx fire, it was only went to a fifth floor. I think there were 5 or 6 there. I got that from